Hello everyone, and thanks for joining us for another edition of Alaska Weather on this Sunday, the first day of August 2021. I'm Dave Percy, meteorologist with the National Weather Service. I'll be hosting today's show. Up first, let's see, on the hazardous weather graphic, we've got, we've got flood watch continues there for the Noatak Valley and the Kobuk Basin due to the excessive and persistent rainfall they've had up there, and that's out through Monday afternoon, or through Monday evening, actually, for possible flooding in those areas, Kobuk Valley and Northwest Coast, Noatak Valley areas, and then a flood advisory out for northern Koyukuk Valley, southern slopes of Central Brooks Range. Some minor flooding is occurring there in that area, so we have flood advisory out. And that's out until noontime on Monday. And looks like it'll be rain starting to diminish and taper off gradually over the next 24 hours. So probably the last day we'll be seeing these watches and advisories out as it dries out. Otherwise, moving on to the satellite imagery, you can see we've got a frontal boundary there stretching from the eastern Beaufort Sea coast southwestward out across southern Seward Peninsula, Norton Sound, with pretty good rainfall into the southwest interior, lower mid-Yukon River Valley areas, and back into more moisture out over the central Bering Sea, St. Lawrence Island, and St. Matthew Island, and the front down into the Adak area and another low-pressure area just north of Shemya. Should start this rolling there, and there we go. And you can see that persistent low off the coast of the Panhandle. Been staying far enough offshore there that really not affecting it, although it was a little cooler today. A few more clouds in as a weakened trough spun in out of that and just brought some cooler temperatures, a little more clouds, but pretty dry conditions continuing. Sunny and hot over the eastern interior today into the central Tanana Valley, Copper River Basin, even Susitna Valley, excuse me, into the Kenai Peninsula. Temperatures rising into the 80s, all those areas, while it cooled off in the Panhandle. But Port Alexander still reached into the 70s, and let's see, Hoonah had 77, down from yesterday's 86 or whatever they had, and 74 at Ketchikan. Still pretty nice day down there, but much warmer temperatures, almost hitting 90 there over the eastern interior at Eagle. They had a mid-afternoon temperature of 88 degrees. Otherwise, it stays wet. Winds not as strong as they have been. Still some pretty good rainfall amounts occurring. Mostly not so much up in the watch area today, but farther to the south. Nome had about 1/3 of an inch of precipitation in the last 12 hours. St. Mary's, though, picked up 2/3 of an inch, 0.66 inches in that same 12-hour period. Caltag, a little over 1/2 an inch. And Bettles, off to the east there, right under the front, they had about 0.17 of an inch of precipitation, with lighter amounts extending up to the eastern Arctic coast north of the eastern Brooks Range. Otherwise, looked like a few scattered showers trying to develop with a weak trough shifting up to Kodiak Island and the coastal areas of Bristol Bay, Dillingham, Togiak, and then the rain over the southwest interior up to about the Seward Peninsula. Lighter amounts, so anywhere from 0.05 to just 0.2 of an inch up there to the north, and then picking up again as in the wind as that system southwest of St. Lawrence Island begins to move in, and then high pressure Gulf of Alaska right off the southeast coast, helping to push a little cooler air in off the ocean from what you had yesterday. And for tonight, forecast variably cloudy. There'll be some clouds around, just a risk of a shower over toward the eastern border, but nothing too significant. Although precipitation starts to push in toward the coast of Prince of Wales Island, but doesn't quite reach it during the night tonight. And rain, moderate to heavy at times, briefly heavy, St. Lawrence Island, Seward Peninsula, up into the southern slopes of the western Brooks Range, with lighter rainfall amounts as you head east, all the way up to the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. Should stay mostly clear with high pressure over the eastern, southeast, and southern part of the state, drying out from Bristol Bay. Still a chance of rain, Bering Sea, or the Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula. Periods of rain, AKwx and ATKA, as that system moves in. Look for windy conditions, and St. Lawrence Island as well, small craft advisories. And for Monday, system rolls into the, or that front actually, low pressure, just a weak low pressure south of AKwx or ATKA Island. So rain will end at AKwx and begin to taper off at ATKA late in the day as it begins to push in toward Nikolsky. And the Pribilofs late tomorrow. Wet and windy conditions, St. Lawrence Island, Bering Strait coast, and that front now mostly affecting the Brooks Range and North Slope with rain. In fact, conditions will improve up across all that area with the passes Anatuk and adding and probably losing the IFR conditions going VFR tomorrow afternoon. But cooler, cloudier, and definitely a better chance of showers and precipitation across all the southeast coast with the risk of an isolated thunderstorm or two. And it'll be sunny and warm, temperatures back into the mid-70s to maybe even upper 80s again over interior Alaska from Bristol Bay, Kenai Peninsula, up to the Fairbanks area, eastward to Tok and Eagle. And then the outlook for Tuesday looks like it'll start to cool down a little bit with increasing clouds, especially the Copper River Basin, quite an area of convection, showers, and possible thunderstorms moving in or flat out rain. Same thing for Prince William Sound, central North Gulf Coast, Kenai Peninsula, into eastern Turnagain Arm to the Chugach Mountains. Hard to say if it'll get west of the mountains or not. But cloudy, cooler, and showery with some rain and wind moving into Prince of Wales Island late in the day. And gale force winds coming into the Alaska Peninsula with that system, possibly even the Fox Islands, as that 992 millibar low moves to Unmak Island. Windy and wet conditions arrive at the Pribilofs, and kind of touch and go there for St. Lawrence Island, but sunnier and warmer over the central and especially the west coast areas. Definitely seeing a warm up there with more sunshine. And the lows for tonight, mid to upper 50s central interior, upper 40s to mid 50s southern Alaska, and in the 50s for the Panhandle, upper 30s, otherwise 40s for the Arctic coast, and near 50 for the Aleutians. Highs tomorrow, quite warm there, 10 on 82, Fairbanks 86, same thing for Eagle, 85 down at Northway, Tok, 84 or mid 80s, Yukon Flats. And 75 to 85, Susitna Valley, Matanuska Valley, Kenai Peninsula, but cooler 60s for the Panhandle and mid 50s there, or lower to mid 50s for the Aleutians, but still could see mid to upper 60s there on Alaska Island, Dutch Harbor, and the Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula. Otherwise near 70, upper 60s Bristol Bay, near 80 for McGrath and Nikolai. Lows for Tuesday morning. Mid-30s on the central Arctic coast, otherwise 40s up there north of the Brooks Range, 55 to 60 in the central interior, lower to mid-50s southern Alaska, lower 50s for the Panhandle and the Alaska Peninsula, mid-40s there for the Aleutians. Highs on Tuesday, 87 forecast high for Fairbanks, otherwise well into the 80s. They're from the lower Yukon River area, say Galena, mid-80s, McGrath and Nikolai, 70 to 80 for the Susitna Valley, 60 to 75 for the Kenai Peninsula, but cooler for Prince William Sound, upper 70s still over the western Copper River Basin, in the 60s for the Panhandle, and mid-50s out over the Aleutians, mid-50s for the Pribilofs, and Seward Peninsula warming up, may see mid-70s.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to flying weather, Monday morning, IFR there, northern interior, right on across the Brooks Range to the Arctic coast, and then extending down across the northwest coast through the Bering Strait, western Seward Peninsula, western Yukon Delta, part of the Kuskokwim Delta, and all of the central eastern Bering Sea, and just about all the Aleutians, although quite a bit of improvement towards Shimmy and Attu. Bristol Bay, marginal VFR to VFR, patch of IFR over the southwest mountains. Otherwise, VFR in the interior, marginal VFR areas of western Alaska Range on the eastern slopes, southern Cook Inlet, Kachemat Bay, and Kamishak Bay. IFR Kodiak Island, marginal for Fognak Island, and marginal VFR, Prince William Sound, North Gulf Coast, IFR toward Yakutat to south of Elfin Cove, almost to Sitka. and otherwise marginal for the southeast coast. And then for the afternoon, good VFR, all of the interior, really improving there for the Brooks Range into the North Slope, at IFR for the Arctic coast. And IFR, marginal VFR, retreating westward a little bit there along the west coast, and Bristol Bay becoming mostly, probably all VFR. IFR holding central eastern Bering, St. Lawrence Island to the Pribilofs, the Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, marginal VFR, Kiska Island, and Amchitka to Adak. Marginal VFR, Kodiak Island, VFR, Fogneck Island now, and Cook Inlet, Kenai Peninsula. Lingering marginal VFR, Prince William Sound into the Coast Range, and out along the coast, IFR, Montague Island to Yakutat, and a little to the east, Icy Bay. Otherwise, VFR for the southeast coast. And for the, let's see, Tuesday afternoon, let me back it up one here. There we go, Tuesday morning. IFR, central eastern Beaufort Sea coast, IFR Bering Strait roughly across St. Lawrence Island, Pribilof, southern Bering Sea, all of the Aleutians, most of the Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island, but VFR Fogneck Island, possibly marginal VFR and Cook Inlet, low stuff, probably some stratus, low clouds, possibly fog. And IFR though, southern Kenai Peninsula, all of Prince William Sound into Portage, or actually Whittier, maybe Portage, with IFR eastward to Yakutat, but the Panhandle staying VFR, as well as the interior. And now for Tuesday afternoon, VFR over interior Alaska, possible marginal VFR holding Cook Inlet, Kenai Peninsula, kind of right on the edge of things there. And then for the Prince William Sound area, eastern Copper River Basin, Wrangell Mountains, looks possibly marginal in the afternoon. Interior looking really good. Eastern North Slope, marginal, eastern Arctic coast, Barter Island, Kaktovik, and possibly Prudhoe Bay, IFR, marginal for the central coast. VFR on the west side, IFR, St. Lawrence Island, Bering Sea, Pribilof, all the Aleutians, south side of the Alaska Peninsula. A little bit of improvement for Kodiak Island, but still marginal. And for passes, Anaktuvik, IFR to VFR. Big improvement up that way, starting out with the lowest conditions in the morning for Adigan, and VFR, afternoon hours into the evening. Lake Clark and Merrill, good VFR. Rainy, VFR, and windy also, VFR. Isabel, VFR. And Mentasta, same thing, VFR. Tanita, VFR. Portage, marginal VFR to VFR in the afternoon. And Chilkoot and White starting out possibly marginal, becoming VFR. Freezing levels, upper level low, cool pool there off the southeast coast, 8,000 feet there, but 12,000 feet toward the eastern border. Roughly 12,000 feet here with developing strengthening upper high pressure over the interior. 14,000 feet over the Alaska Peninsula, 4,000 feet western Bering. Icing, moisture shifting westward now. Pribilof's zone of light to isolated moderate rime or mixed icing there, just catching St. Lawrence Island and cutting across western Seward Peninsula, and then eastward, North Slope on the Arctic coast, but nothing very moderate the way it looks at this point in time. And for the jet stream, easterlies 100 knots out of the east, eastern North Gulf coast, and then southerlies 95 to 105 knots right across the Pribilofs from the central Aleutians into the Russian Far East, so that backing to the west a little bit with high pressure developing over the interior. And 9,000 feet, 45 to 65 knots southerlies over the Bering Sea, 3,000 feet. 50-knot winds from the south between the trough and the ridge over the interior. Pribilof's 50 knots. Light and variable winds, though, everywhere else over the state, even the west central Aleutians. Turbulence. Widespread considerable moderate chop from the Cape Western Seward.
Thanks for joining us for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder, and today I'm privileged to introduce Dr. Uccellini, the Director of the United States National Weather Service. Welcome back to Alaska, sir.
Thank you, Dave. Glad to be here.
Thanks. Prior to being the leader of the National Weather Service, your work included an extensive look at snowstorms across the northeastern United States. These are the types of storms that can bring some of the country's largest cities to its knees. Tell me a little bit about your fascination with snow.
Well, as far back as I can remember, I've always been interested in weather, growing up as a kid on Long Island, New York, and was particularly fascinated by snowstorms, why they occurred. The distribution of snow was very varied across the entire region, the rain-snow line. all those things fascinated me right from the get-go. And I was interested in knowing how they worked, how the forecast worked, or more often than not, didn't work one way or the other. And that drove me, that interest continued to build and drove me through high school right into college, wanting to be a meteorologist.
Okay, that's a fascinating story, and I think every meteorologist has a weather story like that in some way.
Right.
Due to Alaska's size and proximity to the North Pole, sometimes it's difficult to detect and analyze the weather patterns over Alaska. What's the National Weather Service doing to improve that weather detection?
Well, observations in this type of environment is a big challenge, whether it's from space or from what we call in situ observations from the ground or within the systems. Clearly, satellites have been playing an increasing role in providing the big picture, not only from a visual sense and what you see is occurring, but also from providing the data for numerical models that then are used to actually predict the weather. Alaska is actually pretty well positioned with respect to polar orbiting satellites, since you get a faster return of those satellites over your particular area. And in fact, the polar satellite system is the backbone for the observations that we use in our models, especially our global models, and they're particularly important for observing weather features that affect Alaska.
Alaskans live and die by the weather every day, and one of the strategic goals of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration and the National Weather Service is to develop a more weather-ready nation. What does it mean for Alaskans to be weather-ready?
Well, the strategic outcome is based on people being ready, responsive, and therefore resilient to the increasing threats to extreme weather events. Those threats are related to not only the nature of the events, but the fact that we're becoming more vulnerable to them as we have more people, more infrastructure that could be affected by these events. So we have to ensure that the observations we make for situational awareness, the forecasts we make for people to take the proper responses, are connected to people's actions, the response to these events, so that they will be more resilient to what's facing them. You know, there are examples with respect to hurricanes. More people living along the coastline takes longer to evacuate. We have to make better forecasts with longer lead times, but we also have to communicate the threat so people will actually take action to avoid those storms. Up here you have, as in other parts of the United States, an increasing threat related to fire. As there are more people living in fire-prone areas, we have to ensure that our forecasts are good, that we don't have false alarms that make people not react to the forecast when in fact they should. But we also have to be able to communicate the threat and make sure that we're working with the partners in the emergency management community so that communities and right down to individuals will actually take the proper responses in the face of these events. So that's the strategic goal. There are a lot of challenges for us in terms of improving forecasts, but also improving our communication skills and linking with the emergency management communities that are actually out there trying to protect lives and mitigate property loss.
So a huge partnership effort going forward.
That's one of the important keys for the success of meeting the strategic goal.
Okay. One of the things you're talking about was understanding the weather information we're getting back from the computers, weather modeling, and you did a lot of work with that in some of your prior positions with the Environmental Prediction Center there, the National Center for Environmental Prediction. What can you tell us about recent improvements in that weather modeling? And you were using the polar orbiters as kind of a source of information that started that process.
Well, you know, first of all, we have to recognize that everything you see, you read and hear about weather, climate, or ocean forecasts are all driven by numerical models. Now, it really has been the revolution in our forecast process in the last part of the 20th century. The success of that numerical enterprise is based on three factors: big computers, global data, not just local data, but you have to have a global data set, and then the models themselves, the science that's behind the models and in running the models in an operational mode. So we're working to improve all three of those components. We upgraded our computers last year. We're going through another upgrade even as I speak. We'll be upgrading from 200 trillion calculations per second to 700 trillion calculations per second by January of 2015. This increase in the computer will allow us to run what we call Earth system models. It's not just the atmosphere, it's the atmosphere, ocean, ice, which is obviously very important up here, and land models that are all coupled together at higher resolution. So you need the big computers, you need the science that allows us to run these models and run them in a parallel mode, and that they're coupled so that the ocean effects could affect the atmosphere and vice versa, as an example. And then the global observations are absolutely critical, and over the last 20, 30 years they've become more dependent upon the satellite systems, and especially the polar orbiting satellites, which help drive the observations needed for those models, whether they be atmospheric observations, land, ice observations. We're driving more and more of that from satellites now that feed into these models and produce forecasts with extended lead times. Now out, for extreme events especially, we're seeing much improved forecast out in the 4, 5, 6, 7, and even 8-day range, which gets us back to Weather Ready Nation, because if you're going to get ready for a storm event, you want those consistent forecasts approaching that event from day 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, so you can take the actions several days in advance that can help mitigate the property loss and protect your livelihood.
Okay, all part of the mission of protecting life and property. Dr. Uccellini, thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate it, and speaking to Alaskans and sharing how the National Weather Service is working for Alaska and the nation. Wish you safe travels around the 49th. Enjoy your time here, sir. And for Alaska Weather Facts, I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Sea ice analysis today. Still a little bit there, not much, but some leftover ice there west of Kivalina, northwest coast, but pretty open as you head north there, and still into the coastline from, for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast till you get over to roughly, Dead Horse or so in that area, and then it looks like the Barter Island area in the ice-free zone. And from there, looking at the coastal water forecasts, not too bad. Again, light winds continue over the Panhandle with very nice conditions. Will be an increase in the clouds and moisture, but still looking light on the winds, variable 5 to 10 knots over the central and southern inside waters. South coast, variable to south at 5 to 10 knots, seas just 3 feet. And the north coast, southeasterlies at 10 knots, 3-foot seas. 15 knots out of the south for Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay area, both Sunday and Monday. Otherwise, light variable winds continue for the central and southern inside waters, 5 to 10 knots, slight seas. And southeast winds at 10 knots for the central and north coast, along coast Prince Wales Island, south at 15 with 3-foot seas. Prince William Sound, North Gulf Coast, light variable winds tomorrow, 10 knots with seas at 2 feet. And Cook Inlet, light variable winds, 10 knots, 1 to 2-foot seas. East winds 15 knots for Kamishak Bay. Southeast winds 15 knots for the Barren Islands. And for Monday, southwest at 10 for Cook Inlet, 2 to 3-foot seas. Light variable winds now for Kamishak Bay, the Barren Islands, all of the North Gulf Coast. Prince William Sound as well, 10-knot winds with slight seas, but a little more predominantly out of the west or variable to west there. Kodiak Island tomorrow. Southeast winds 15 knots there along the east side of the island, but variable at 10 for Shelikof Strait. Otherwise, the Alaska Peninsula, small craft advisories. Southeast winds 25 knots, 6 to 7-foot seas. Bristol Bay, southeast winds 25 knots for small craft advisories. Seas at 4 feet. Outlook for Monday. Pick the winds up a little bit there, north side of the Alaska Peninsula all the way up to Bristol Bay. Southeast sustained 30-knot winds now, 4 to 6-foot seas. Small craft advisories from Cape Sarachev to Sitkinak. On the south side there for easterlies at 25 knots, southeast 20 knots on the east side of Kodiak Island, Shelikof Strait, northeast 20, seas at 4 feet. And for Unalaska Island, southeast winds 15 to 20 knots, 5 to 6 foot seas for Sunday, and 15 to 25 knot southerly winds for Nikolsky and Unmak Island. Small craft advisories for Adak and Atka, south winds at 25, southwest 25 for Amchitka Island, north 20 for Kiska to Shemya. And from the area from Shemya to Kiska on Monday, west winds 15 knots, but much brisker winds for Amchitka Island, northwest at 30 with 7 foot seas. We got gale warnings out for Adak and Atka. South winds 35 knots, 9 to 11 foot seas. Gale warnings also for Unmak Island. Coming up to gales throughout the day and into the afternoon. 35 knots, seas building to 10 feet. Unalaska Island southeast winds increasing to 30 knots. And for the southwest coast, small craft advisory, southeast winds 25 knots, east 25 knot winds for St. Matthew Island, south 25 for the Pribilofs, and northeast 25 for St. Lawrence Island, Norton Sound, east winds at 20 knots. And small craft advisories for Norton Sound. In fact, small craft advisories everywhere in these zones on Monday, the exception being St. Matthew Island, east 35 knots. That's gale warning wind levels there with 10 foot seas. Southeast 30, southwest coast, St. Lawrence Island, and the Pribilofs, and seas as high as 8 feet. Eastern Beaufort Sea coast, west-southwest, 15 to 20 knots tomorrow. Small craft advisories, Central Coast 25 knot winds or 25 to 30 knot winds, Central Coast all the way down to Cape Thompson to Wales, much lighter and more variable out of the north at 10 knots. Then on Monday, Wales to Cape Thompson, small craft advisory, southeast 25 and 30 knot winds, Cape Thompson to Cape Beaufort out of the northeast, and the western Arctic coast, especially from Point Lay on south, 25 knots out of the northeast. Central and east side, 10 knot winds from the northeast till you get over toward Kaktovik, Barter Island, Demarcation Point. Then you're at 15 knots from the east. For tonight, rain heavy at times with a flood watch for the Kobuk Basin and Kobuk Valley flood advisory, southern slopes of the central western Brooks Range, lighter amounts north of the mountains, and rain extends all the way back into the Bering Sea and western Aleutians. Warmer over the interior, but cooler and damper over the panhandle, as you can see. It dries out even along the west coast, stays wet, Brooks Range to the Arctic coast.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.